What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Mammoth Mike podcast. Today we have me, Helena, Khan, and Ange.
So this episode, we're going to be focusing a lot on mental health, and we're going to be interviewing a psychologist therapist, Lizbeth Orozco. The main reason why I want to discuss mental health for this episode was we know that sometimes school can be challenging on our mental health, and I feel like we all just sort of struggle on maintaining a balance. So Jazz, although she's not here right now, she did send out a survey asking questions about, mental health and stuff. So let's get right into the interview.
Hi everybody, I'm Jasmine and I'm here with my aunt who is Liz Orozco. Please introduce yourself.
So like you said, I'm Liz Orozco and I am a mental health therapist and I currently work at the schools. I get contracted to go in and provide therapy sessions for the kids at the schools. So currently I'm actually providing telehealth because, as you know, the schools across the country are all closed. So that's what I do.
Great. Okay, so I don't know if you guys remember, but I sent out a mental health poll and a lot of these questions I got from you guys and I got the ideas to kind of ask her to help you guys because I really thought that this session could be a mental health session. So we'll start right off with the questions. Okay. So a big thing is I see that you guys are very stressed about school and everything. So one of the questions is, what things do you recommend to help social life without seeing everybody?
Okay, that's a really good question because right now there's a lot of people that are struggling with that, right? How do you connect again in a way that is fulfilling to you, right? And so I wish I had one answer for everyone, right? But it's going to really depend. You're going to have to stop and think about the things that you missed and what it is that you miss about them. So you could, for example, say, I miss drama club, right? Well, what exactly do you miss about drama club? What was the part that you missed? Do you miss laughing with everyone? Do you miss, what specific thing do you miss the most? And how can you recreate that with this virtual, world that we're in right now? Because right now we at least have that, that avenue to connect, right? We can connect virtually. We don't have to necessarily meet, or maybe you can meet with one person, or maybe do like an adjusted play or something where you guys are all. I don't think you guys get to watch Saturday Night Live, but they were kind of doing some skits remotely, and that's kind of a cool way for them to still be able to produce something, even though they were all remote. Does that make sense? So it's going to really depend on each person.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, and now how do you balance school and having to connect with people? Because I feel like connecting with people online is just very hard. So how do you balance that with school and with trying to figure out how to kind of get those social activities in?
Yeah, so I think right now we're all feeling a little bit fatigued, right? Because we have this technology that we're now using for everything. Whereas before, we were doing our face-to-face stuff and then we used technology to connect with our friends. But now by the end of the day, we're so tired of connecting through technology that we don't know if that's another way that we want to connect with friends, right? And so your question is, how do you find the time to balance?
How do you balance social life and school?
Social life and school. Okay. So you should be able to have enough work that still leaves you with enough time to socialize with your friends, right? You don't want to just be go, 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 because part of having those relationships and those friendships, they help us with our self-care, right? We connect with them, even if we grieve together, right? Of the things that we've lost, if we vent together, that's kind of a way to help each other connect, just emotionally, so that we're able to move through all the stress that we're going through a little bit at a time. So it's really important to put some priority into that. I know sometimes it doesn't seem like, connecting socially matters too much, but it really does. It really is an important part of our self-care. So if your day is so full to the point that you're not making any time to connect and reset, that will eventually catch up with you. And so, when it does catch up to you, I think that's when you have to stop and say, okay, what's missing here? And that's when that you adjust your life. You say, okay, well, I have too many things on my plate. I need to let something go because I have to prioritize these social contacts that really matter to my mental health. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that actually branches onto another question that I would like to ask. So a lot of the students, our school is very, very rigorous, and we constantly have work. Like, I know right now a lot of seniors and a lot of students in general, we wake up 5 minutes before class, which is at 9 o'clock, and then we go all the way until finally we're just so burnt out that we just pass out on our desks. We're so tired. So how do we know when we have to put school aside and focus on ourselves and our relationships and things like that?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And I think one of the things we have to talk about is stress here, right? So we have acute stress and then we have chronic stress, right? So acute stress is a stress that, maybe a test, maybe an argument, things like that, things that have like a beginning and an end. And then once they end, you kind of can bounce back from, right? And this is stress not to be confused with acute disorder. That's something entirely different. Okay. But acute stress, so you have your test, you have your day, right, where you're kind of stressed out, and then once it's over, then you're kind of, if you take a little break, you're kind of able to bounce back, right? So that's what our acute stress looks like, right? And that is something that we can deal with on, fairly easily, right? Versus chronic stress. So chronic stress is when you're in an unhealthy relationship, and now unhealthy relationships can be just, it doesn't have to be like your boyfriend or your girlfriend, it can be with your parents, it can be with yourself, and so if you have an unhealthy relationship with yourself, where you are not giving yourself the self-care that you need in order to take on what you're taking on every day, then you're going to start seeing some side effects of that, right? And so one of the things that I want kids to understand is that our emotions, they're all there to communicate something to us, every single one, right? And so if you're exhausted at the end of the day, right, but once you get some rest, you're able to come back and be yourself and attend to your, to your responsibilities or whatever it is that you have going on, then you're going to be okay. But if you're being exhausted and then you find yourself unable to do it again and again and again, that's telling you something. That's your body giving you clues that something's not right, right? That's our body takes care of us that way. So all these emotions, all our, physical symptoms, all that stuff, that's our body communicating to us, hey, gotta take care of me right now, right? And so we have to listen to that. And so, for example, if you are dealing with, with sad thoughts, right? Say you're totally exhausted at the end of the day, and then you have a hard time coming back, and you start noticing that some things are getting in the way, right? You have sad thoughts that are getting in the way of you getting back to your work. You have, physical aches. You have, multiple things that are kind of getting in the way, and they're starting to look a little bit like depression. Well, if you've had this for about 2 weeks and you can't seem to be coming back from that, you want to attend to that. You might need to seek out help from someone, from a professional, and get an assessment done, because you might be struggling with depression. And then that makes life a lot more difficult, right? Because that just brings on its own additional symptoms, right? Or if you're starting to avoid things, right? If you're starting to avoid doing your work, if you notice that every time right before class, your heart's beating really fast and you dread it, and you used to enjoy certain things and now you're dreading them, and you're getting all these other, symptoms that kind of look like anxiety, then that might be something that you're going to have to pay attention to as well. It's like, how long, usually for anxiety, it's, we usually about 6 months. If you've been experiencing these symptoms for about 6 months or so, then you want to go in to your primary care provider, have them assess, whether, it's normal what you're going through for our culture and our society, or maybe you are dealing with something that is, that would warrant a diagnosis and would need some intervention and some help. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect sense. Okay. From there, I want to go into a quote from a student from the poll that I sent out. So here it is. How do I stop feeling physically unwell when I compartmentalize my anxiety and stress for long periods of time? I need to get stuff done, and I can't unless I force myself not to focus on my stresses. But I almost always need to be fulfilling some responsibility, whether for my school or for my family, and I don't have time to get away and deal with the emotional stuff. This makes me get a lot of tension headaches and sometimes migraines, but recently it's been affecting me in other ways that I'm not as competent in dealing with. It's inconvenient to say the least, and I've yet to find a way to help prevent it.
Okay, so it sounds like this person is really struggling with everything that they've got on their plate, right? It sounds to me like they have so much going on that they are not finding the time to, to kind of come back and take care of themselves. So, I think a lot of times there's this expectation to be able to handle all the stress that is thrown at you, right? But the thing is that we have to understand is that stress is felt differently by different people, right? Some people feel stress like something that's pushing them down, right? And some people feel stress like they wear it like a badge of honor, right? So if you experience stress these two different ways, right, you're going to there's not one is better than the other. They both have their positives and their negatives, right? If you experience stress as something that kind of pushes you down, right, you're going to get to a point where you're feeling the stress and you're going to feel really pressed down, and you're going to want to, then that's your body saying like, hey, it's time to take care of me, and you're going to have to listen to that because your body won't really let you move until you do, right? Your body will just start shutting you down until you listen, right? And that's how you end up with, all these symptoms that we later, put a diagnosis on, but really it's just your body saying, you got to take care of me right now. I'm going to shut you down, right? Now, on the other side, you have people that wear the stress as a badge of honor, right? I mean, give them the stress, they love it. They thrive on it. It makes them feel fantastic because it makes them feel like they're achieving a lot and you're getting a lot of stuff done. Well, that might seem like the ideal thing to deal with stress, but at the same time, that doesn't give you the breaks that you need to take care of yourself. So you can end up with a person that keeps going, and then their body starts to carry all that stress, and they start to have physical symptoms, and they start to have all of these, other, because their body will tell you like, hey, something's not right. But if you have your self-esteem wrapped up with your stress, you're going to keep going, and your relationships might suffer, your health might suffer, and you're not going to stop because, again, you have that, that need, and maybe you can't even stop and slow down because if you do, then your self-esteem suffers, and so you're kind of trapped with, with stress. You have to hold on to that stress in order to kind of feel okay. So either way, either way, people experience stress. There can be a positive to it and there can be a negative to it, right? So one of those things is to kind of figure out how you experience stress, to learn about yourself, and then to start listening to what your clues are for stress. It's like, oh, okay, I'm starting to disconnect from people. That's not really how I want to live my life, so that's your clue. It's like, oh man, I have to adjust this, right? Or I can't seem to find a way to move forward and enjoy the things that I used to enjoy, or I'm avoiding my stress now and I used to be okay with it. That says, okay, I need to figure out a way to, to take care of whatever's going on right now that's causing me this particular stress, right? So we kind of have to handle that. Read me your question once again, because I'm pretty sure I went off on a tangent, but read me your question.
No, that's
Going
okay.
somewhere with it.
Yeah, it wasn't really a question. It was sort of a comment piece because it was the person's quote. But their question Their question was, how can I stop feeling physically unwell when I compartmentalize my anxiety and stress for long periods of time?
Okay, so see, that person is already experiencing then
Mm.
that stress, right? That person is already noticing that they are that what they're doing is not um, it's not meant to be a long-term solution for your stress, right? So that person doesn't seem to have an avenue to reset, right? They don't seem like they've made that time in their life. They haven't set that time aside to bounce back, you know? So we talk about resiliency, right? And so resiliency is your ability to handle stress when it arises and then to protect yourself from future stress, right? So that person, for example, I would say, now that you know what happens to you when you don't set the time, right, to bounce back, when you know that it doesn't work for you, that you suffer in a lot of different ways, you know, how will you move forward? What will you include or what will you take away from your life in order to make sure that you can make room for that part of your life that is necessary? You know, that's important. It's a necessary piece, and your body and your symptoms that you're having are um, are a response. They're communicating to you, hey, you need to take care of us too.
So I think a big thing, especially for kids at my school, is we feel so pressured into our grades. We feel like we need to have straight A's constantly and that we need to ace every single assignment and every single test. So the majority or the whole day is spent trying to get to that goal. And some of us, including myself, struggle so much with getting to that goal of having good grades because we think, oh, if I don't have good grades, I'm not going to get into a good college. Like, it's just so much stress causing from school. So it's kind of like, what do we do about that when we're so scared to not get these perfect grades and these perfect scores, but we're completely disregarding our mental health? So what do we do when that kind of stuff happens?
Yeah, so, you know, unfortunately, you know, disregarding our mental health is one of those things that is um, that sometimes is looked at with pride, you know, kind of like, oh, I'm just, you know, I'm gonna keep going, and you know, I don't care, you know, I'm gonna just push through because achievement is what's the most important thing, right? And I think as you get older, you know, for some people, they will follow that route for years and years and years to come, right? But you guys are kind of starting to get to that age now, you know, like late high school, early college, where you start to reevaluate the values that your society brings to you, that your parents bring to you, all that stuff, right? And you know, and you start to reevaluate what's important in your life, right? So I know it's really difficult when you're in high school because right now your family, your school, you have a whole system surrounding you that's telling you what's important, and it's really hard to kind of see beyond that, right? And so, you know, I guess I would question like, why is that so important? You know, what is that makes it really important? Where are you going? Where are you heading to? What is it that you know, what is it that you want to get to? You know, it's a really difficult question because it's really attached to the values that you grew up with, right? And the thing is, you know, no one wants to tell a kid that, oh, you know, it's not important for you to not get into a good school, right? Nobody wants to be the person that like takes that away from a high achieving kid, right? Everybody wants to kind of root the kid on and say, yeah, you know, go for it, do it, you know, all that stuff, right? But I think it's a false idea to think that you have to sacrifice your mental health in order to achieve. I think that that they can go hand in hand. You know, I think that you have it, the earlier you learn to attend to your mental health, I think the longer, I don't want to say the easier your achievement will be, but the easier it will be for you to achieve the things that you want to achieve, you know, because you will be able to kind of, you won't burn out. You know, I get worried about the kids that go so hard and push so hard and they don't take care of their mental health, and then they have a big crash, you know. And so I think if you can incorporate some sort of mental health skills, you know, that help you kind of go the long run, you know, I think that that would be better. So, for example, you know, we talk about self-care, right? You know, what self-care does, right? It helps you counter the stress response, right? Because we can only go so long with a high stress response before our body just really starts to take us down, you know? And so we need to be able to take care of our bodies, right? And so you can, things you can do are, you know, you can, for example, talk to your friends, you can have fun, you know, you can do things that help you feel energized. Those are some of the things that kind of help counter, you know, some of the stress. But we have to take care of our physical, you know, because stress can show, you know, in us physically, psychologically, emotionally. You know, there's lots of different areas that we have to, you know, that we have to take care of, right? So we kind of have to figure out what area helps us bounce back. What are we lacking, you know, to help us bounce back? So I would ask, what is the barrier that keeps you from attending to your mental health? You know, what is the barrier is what I guess what I would ask all of you. Is it one too many assignments? Is it, you know, are you like, what's getting in the way? In other words, what's getting in the way of you attending? Or is it maybe you don't know, you know, because there's a lot of people that kind of, you know, they know how to get the, you know, they had to study for the test. They know how to, you know, get all of their assignments in and all that stuff, but they don't know how to take care of their mental health. They don't know how to listen to their emotions. You know, they don't know how to feel the stress that's going on in their bodies and kind of know that, like, okay, I am completely overwhelmed. I need to step away and I need to take a break. Does that make sense? I told you I could ramble.
That's completely fine. Okay, so on to our next quote, which I think ties into this. This is from a student. We don't not, all of this is anonymous. So this is our next quote. To be honest and kind to myself. It's really, really hard to do that, but it's really easy to get caught up in self-doubt and negativity and avoiding problems completely rather than dealing with them. Just make things worse. I try to advise myself like I might find a friend, or I try to look at stuff objectively without all the initial anxiety-fueled judgment calls I normally do. I try to be more aware of myself and whether or not I'm meeting the goals I have set for my well-being in general. I'm good at letting my physical health be neglected sometimes, and that takes my mental health too. So I try to stay on top of that stuff like sleep and eating and whatnot in hopes that it'll be harder for my mental health to take a dive.
Okay, so it sounds like this person has kind of already recognized that their mental health is important, and they've tried to kind of set some guidelines for themselves to follow so that they don't feel, it sounds like they've probably already experienced, you know, the challenges, and then they've tried to set some safeties to kind of be able to bounce back as part of that resiliency when we were talking about having, you know, the ability to handle stress and then protecting yourself from future stress. It sounds like that person has already made or realized that they have to set something for themselves, right? But they recognize that something's missing. That even though they try to get their sleep and they try to get their you know, their needs met for their mental health, you know, there's an element there that's missing that's keeping them from really getting back to their norm, right? And so one of the things that I would wonder is if this person has been experiencing this all of the time, or is it just right now during all this coronavirus stuff? because one of the ways of this, this coronavirus stuff is affecting all of us is, it's all coming down to stress for all of us. It's added stress, right? And we're all adjusting. And so even though we have physically adjusted to everything that's going on with us, it takes a lot longer for us to emotionally adjust. And so I kind of like that this person was kind of talking a little bit about what seemed like self-compassion when he was talking, or he or she was talking about, talking to themselves as if they are a friend and things like that. I think that I have a great start to that. And so I think, but I also noticed that they were kind of struggling between that self-compassion and then maybe comparison of themselves. So there's a wonderful TED Talk, and I can't remember who it's by, but they talk about the difference between self-esteem and self-compassion, right? And so a lot of times self-esteem, we kind of get to our self-esteem by comparing ourselves to others, right? And so we teach a lot to kids about self-esteem and how to have a good self-esteem, to think good about yourself and things like that. The only problem with that is that self-esteem is really tied to you comparing yourself to somebody else. So if you're like in your class and you got like the, top 2 scores or whatever in the test, then you're going to feel pretty good, right? But if you got the top 2 bottom scores, you're going to feel pretty bad. Even if it's just like by point something, even if it's almost exactly the same test score, it's just by a little bit, just the fact that you are comparing yourself to somebody else, right? And the thing is, there's always going to be somebody that's better than us at something and somebody that's going to be worse at us at something. So the game of comparing ourselves to feel okay, it's almost like a never winning game, because you're always going to be in a situation where you're not going to be at the top. And so then if that's what your self-esteem is based on, you're gonna feel pretty bummed out a lot of times, when you're in situations. So you're going to start limiting yourself because you're not going to want to be at that bottom, So you're like, oh, I'm good at this, I'm only going to stick to this, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I think that person was really going to was the self-compassion. And I think that I would tell that person, focus on that, focus on the self-compassion, because self-compassion is what helps you all those times where your self-esteem is taking a hit, right? Because we all go through that, where we're not trying to compare ourselves, but we inevitably do, right? It's just part of being a human being, I suppose. We want to know who we are, how we compare with others, that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Self-compassion is the way to be okay with yourself, even though you might not be exactly where you wish you were. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense for you.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so next we're going to talk a little bit about motivation and how to kind of keep motivation. So one of the questions is, how do I keep motivation to do normal things that could include homework, eating food, practicing good hygiene, etc.?
Yeah. So that's a really great question, and that's such a unique question to each person, right? So I would say study up on what normally motivates you to do things, right? So what are the things that for you are personally motivating? When you okay, one of the things about motivation, I think that goes hand in hand with motivation, is I think is time management, right? Sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, it's really hard to be motivated to get something done, right? If we see a huge mountain in front of us, I mean, most of us are not feeling very motivated to climb that mountain. And for you guys that do it almost every day because your school is so rigorous, right? For some of you guys, it probably feels like a mountain almost every day. It's like, oh, I have to do this mountain every single day. You've probably gotten really good at it, right? And you probably have some days where you're like on it and you're ready to go. And you probably have some days where it's like, oh, this is really, really hard. Or maybe you have a couple of days of things that you have to do and it's just starting to feel like too big of a mountain, right? And so this is where time management is really important. You have to prioritize your tasks. Breaking that mountain down into smaller tasks, so if you're avoiding something, for example, don't tell yourself, okay, I have to get this assignment done Because if you know that you need, it's going to take you 3 hours to do it, in your head you're going to be like avoiding it, right? But if you break it down and you say, you know what, I'm not going to avoid it, because that's going to cause me more anxiety if I avoid it. I'm just going to sit down and work for 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes is better than 0 minutes. I'm going to sit down, work for 5 minutes. Most of the time you can trick yourself to working a little bit longer just by agreeing to work for 5 minutes, you know? And so that's like one of those little tricks, you know, to kind of help with the overwhelm. Because one of the things that when you have a really big task and you avoid it, it gives you a little bit of relief from your anxiety for the moment, but the long term, it creates a bad pattern of anxiety, so that you end up avoiding more and more things on a regular basis. So if you kind of teach your body like, oh yeah, I don't avoid stuff, you know, I go to it. Give yourself those 5 minutes. I'm just going to sit for 5 minutes and work. 5 minutes. I can do 5 minutes, right? And you sit, and sometimes you might just do 5 minutes, and then you tell yourself again, okay, I'll just do another 5 minutes, you know? So let me tell you when, the personal story. So years ago, I climbed Mount Fuji, right? And I was like, I could see the top. It was right there, but my body was done. Like my body was like, you have no more juice left. I don't have anything left, right? Well, I literally looked down on my feet and I was like, just do 3 steps, just 3 steps. And I fooled myself to do just 3 steps, 3 steps. And then I'd stop. I'm like, okay, good. All right, 3 more steps. Yeah. And that's how I got to the top. It took me forever. You know, there was definitely people that were moving way faster and way slower than me. But I could see the top. But if I had told myself, just walk all the way I had no energy left. I had to tell myself 3 steps at a time. And sometimes that's what we have to do.
I know I do that, but I do that with music. So I know a lot of students like to listen to music while they work. So my song is, okay, you're gonna work for the duration of Piano Man by Billy Joel. That's all you're gonna do.
Yeah.
And then I listen to the song and I'm like, man, that's a good song. And I replay it and I keep working because I just love that song so much. So I trick myself. I'm like, oh yeah, you're gonna listen to the song over and over again while you work, because like you're just gonna play for Piano Man by Billy Joel. That's it. That's all you're gonna do.
That's a great song, and that's a great tip. And I think those are the kinds of things that I think, you know, is really good when I talk about connecting with others. You know, everybody right now is struggling a little bit. Whether they're comfortable sharing it or not, is another story. But everybody is you know, having their own challenges, right? And that's just part of life. And so if you share kind of what works for you, somebody else might share what works for them, and then you kind of have this whole group of resources of things that you maybe haven't tried before, right? Like this song thing. I mean, that's fantastic. You know, I just like, I'm gonna have to think about that next time I have something that I don't feel like doing, and it's like, okay, you know, I'm gonna sit down and listen to the song, and I'm just gonna work while the song is on. You know, I mean, that's a really good tip.
So when does someone need to seek further help from somebody else, whether it be like a friend or a doctor or a trusted adult? Like what are some of the signs, and when should we do it?
Okay, so if you are having symptoms, you know, like depressive symptoms, right? Usually, if you've been having them for about 2 weeks, right? You're under eating, overeating, you're, you know, losing weight, gaining weight, you're maybe it's harder for you to wake up in the mornings or get going in the mornings. If you're having negative thoughts, you know, if you are having thoughts of harming yourself, if you are, you know, if you're struggling, you know, if the stress is just kind of getting in the way where you can't seem to bounce back, and this has been going on for longer than 2 weeks, then it's time for you to reach out, right? With the anxiety, the anxiety sometimes can be a bit, you know, longer, because it's one of those things that we all deal with stress and we all deal with anxiety. And so if you experience anxiety, but then you bounce right back, you know, maybe you're doing okay. But if you experience anxiety and you're having more and more trouble bouncing back from that anxiety, or you're starting to avoid things, you know, avoid relationships or avoid tasks or things that are important in your life, and it's starting to affect you either emotionally or psychologically or even physically, and that goes for depression too. If it affects you psychologically, emotionally, physically, all that stuff, then it's time to start reaching out to someone that can help. So when it comes to self-care, there's something about connecting with with yourself and with others. I mean, it's care. It's care. So it is connecting in a way that helps us feel not alone in what we're doing. And when we find the words to express the feelings that we are having, right, and we're able to share that with another person, and then to have the other person meet us there and hear our pain, and then maybe they can help our pain feel a little bit better, or we can kind of connect the way we're feeling and put it into and express it in some way, whether it's through art, whether it's through words, however whatever, dance, like whatever it is that helps you express your emotional state is helpful, because it helps you adjust to the changes in life and adjust to the stresses in life ever so little, and it's those little small adjustments that really take you to the new you that you're going to become, right? And so that self-care is taking our emotional experience, right, and taking care of our needs that our emotional experience is communicating to us, right? And so it's really important for us to be able to identify what our emotion is communicating to us, because every emotion has a need. And when we figure out what the need is, then we can attend to that need. We can ask somebody else to fulfill, whatever it is that we're needing from that other person. And so when our needs are met, then we tend to be able to move forward.
Okay, great. Okay. Thank you for being here, Tia Liz, but they can call you, I don't know, what can they call you?
You can call me Tia Liz, because that's what I am.
Okay. She's your aunt now, guys.
Yeah, everybody's Tia Liz. Call me whenever
Oh yeah, if you guys didn't know, Tia means aunt in Spanish. So
I'm
yeah.
Yes.
So she's your Aunt Liz now, guys. Okay, well, thank you so much for being on here. That was great. I'm sure that everyone can really benefit from that. And thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I hope that I hope that everybody's taking care of themselves in some way, that they're leaning into their relationships right now. It's a really important time for us to really take care of ourselves. To really things don't have to be perfect right now. You don't have to be perfect right now. Um, this is a good time for you to to practice that self-compassion. And I forgot one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about. So one of the things that when we were talking about self-care, right, one of the things that that I wanted to talk about a little bit was gratitude, right? Gratitude, that's one of the things that we have found that can be really helpful sometimes, and that is finding things to be grateful for, right? And that can be really challenging sometimes for a lot of us, right? When we're struggling, when things are really, really hard. But when you learn to practice gratitude, that's one of those things that really helps with stress and with, like, those feelings, like somebody was talking about, um, kind of their self-esteem, being, struggling and stuff like that. Those are some of the things that can be really helpful sometimes, is when you find things to be grateful for, So what some kids will do is they will start a gratitude journal, to kind of rewire their brain. Because sometimes, especially when you're like struggling with depression and the negative thoughts are coming all the time, it's really hard to interrupt those thoughts, but when you kind of learn to journal, your gratitude, and you start to really focus on the things that you're grateful for, it kind of rewires the brain a little bit so that you kind of are able to shift gears into a different kind of thinking.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Thea Liz, for being here. I'm really glad that you could come on here and kind of answer some of our questions and everything like that.
All right. And if all else fails, watch Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Jasmine, for that interview with Miss Orozco. Alright, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you on next Friday or whatever it is. I don't know when we do that thing.
Do Mammoth Bike Night. We're going to do it Friday because we do it every Friday.
We do it some Fridays. So yeah, see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye, guys.